Am I able to put my hat down here?
Yes.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Hello? Okay. Welcome everybody to the special event of Chabad Mattisyahu in honor of Tu Bishvat. We should even say Good Yontif. It's 70 years since the yard site of the previous Rebbe, Rabbi Yosef Yitzchak. And also, naturally, 70 years since the beginning of the leadership of our Rebbe, Rabbi Menachem Mendel Schneerson. Firstly, a couple of announcements. The first thing is Hakarat Tov. I want to show my appreciation to all of you. Thank you so much for coming, and thanks to all of those who helped us come to this event. And a special thank you to the municipality of Jerusalem and Aryeh King and the local community center Ginot Ha'ir for sponsoring this special event. A big thank you, a big round of applause. Thank you. I don't know if they taught this to you in Ulpan, but please put your cell phones on to vibrate. We say retet. One of the first words I learned here when I made it in Aliyah. Retet. Thank you. Also, on the back, in addition to all of the food for your soul, for your bodies, there's also food for your soul. A number of flyers, whether it's a Living Jewish, the weekly story of the Rebbe. You also have other flyers, as well as for our monthly lectures by Rabbi Hirschler. We also have classes every single week on Tuesday evenings at 7:30. At 7:30 in English, Chassidut. We're just finishing the 13 Principles of Faith of the Rambam, according to the teachings of Chassidut. And right after Pesach, we're starting a great course on Tanya, starting from chapter 26. It's a whole subject for about 7 or 8 chapters, and we're looking forward to seeing everyone at our regular classes. Of course, Shabbat. Every Shabbat we have a special minyan Shabbat morning. Right now we're at Hechal Shlomo, 3 doors away from Chabad. Our center is 52 King George, and Hechal Shlomo is 58, the second floor up. And then we have a Sudat Shabbat, a meal for everybody, and you're all welcome to join us every single week. If you're not yet on our email list, you're welcome to approach Miriam, the secretary. She's walking around with forms, and we'll be happy to add you to our list. And we advertise all of our great events and classes, just as this great event that you're here for tonight. We're starting soon a very great project of Chavrutot. It's called Yeshiva Time, where every Thursday night you're going to be able to learn with your own personal Chavruta, your own personal learning mate, and that's going to be very interesting. We'll speak to Rabbi Diamond. You're welcome to speak to him, and we'll set up in Mirza Hashem this great Yeshiva Time. Just a 30-second walk from here is Diskin, the Wolfson Towers. Now that you all know where Bar Zakai Street is, number 4, and you made hakafot around this building and you found the entrance, Baruch Hashem, just a 30-second walk away from here, in the villas, there used to live a very special man. His name was Ambassador Yehuda Avner, Ambassador of the State of Israel, to 2 countries, I believe, to the United Kingdom and to Australia. And he was an advisor to 5 prime ministers and wrote the famous book, The 5 Prime Ministers. An amazing individual. He was the keynote speaker about 12, 13 years ago, maybe even more, at the International Shulchan Conference. And he spoke about his very warm relationship with Chabad and mainly the Rebbe. And in the late 70s, being the advisor to Prime Minister Menachem Begin, he accompanied Menachem Begin, Prime Minister Begin, to Washington to meet the President of the United States. But on the way, Begin first wanted to visit the Rebbe. And so the entourage came and he wanted to come. The Rebbe shouldn't have to come to the hotel. He came to visit the Rebbe. It's an amazing episode. In any case, after Begin finished his meeting with the President of the United States, he sent Yehuda Avner back to the Rebbe, back to 770, to give a report on what happened with the President. And there was about a 2-hour meeting, very, very long yeshidot. And he tells over that during this encounter, he asked the Rebbe a very bold question. He said, Rebbe, I'd like to ask the Rebbe with all respect, what is a Rebbe? What is the job of a Rebbe? And the Rebbe said, every soul is like a candle. Ner Hashem, nishmat adam. And the job of a Rebbe is to be able to kindle every flame, every candle of every Jewish neshama in the world. And then they continued to speak, and then he got up to leave, and he's about to open the door, and he turns to the Rebbe and says, Rebbe, did the Rebbe ignite my candle? The Rebbe said, no, but I gave you the match. I think this is a very important message when it comes to this special day of Yud Shvat. The 10th day of Shvat, tonight is Yud Aleph Shvat. The Rebbe officially assumed leadership a year later on this night, between Yud and Yud Aleph Shvat. And every year we learn one of the 20 discourses from the Rebbe, Bati Lagani. What's Bati Lagani? It's a quote from Shlomo HaMelech. Basically, Hashem says, Bati Lagani achoti kala. I have come to my garden, my sister, my bride. Hashem, HaKadosh Baruch Hu says it to Am Yisrael. Every time Hashem, in His great presence, comes to this world, Hashem says, I have Baruch Hashem come to my garden. We might look at this world as a jungle, but Hashem looks at this world as a garden. And then afterwards, after Adam Rishon, then the Shekhinah, the divine presence went away, and it came back by Avraham Avinu till Moshe, till Har Sinai. And once again, Hashem said, Bati Lagani, achoti kala. Baruch Hashem, I've come. Hashem says, I've come back down to my garden. And then, with the Chet HaEgel, the sin of the golden calf, the Shekhinah went back away, and then it came by Shlomo HaMelech, and this is where Shlomo said, King Solomon says, in the name of Hashem, of course, Bati Lagani, achoti kala. And then, of course, afterwards, we were naughty children, and then the Shekhinah went away, but when Mashiach comes, once again, it's going to be Bati Lagani achoti. Hashem is going to say, wow, I'm so happy once again to be over here in my garden. And this message is a very important one that the Rebbe discusses in this mimer based on the discourse of the previous Rebbe. And the Rebbe says that we are called Tzivot Hashem. It's actually in last week's Parsha. Tzivot Hashem, the army of Hashem. You might know the logo when the Rebbe started the first international children's worldwide organization called Tzivot Hashem, the army of Hashem. And you have the tzaddik and the hay, and you have the boy standing with his flag, and the girl standing on the other side with her flag. And till today, it's one of the most successful children's international programs. And this is a quote from the Torah, Tzivot Hashem. We are the army of Hashem. Every time we have a mission, we're carrying out, we're part of Hashem's army. But then the Rebbe says something fascinating. He says we're not only called Tzivot Hashem, we're also called Tzvaot. Tzvaot is one of Hashem's names. What? You're calling us Am Yisrael? You're calling us Tzvaot? That's a name which should be reserved for Hashem. How can you call every Jew also Tzvaot in addition to calling us Tzivot Hashem? And the Rebbe explains over there that in addition to the fact that we are messengers of Hashem, we are here in the world to fulfill a mission, Hashem empowers us that we are, so to speak, kivyachol, so to speak, we represent Hashem. We are shluchim, we are emissaries of Hashem, each and every one of us, each and every one of you. And I think that's the message that the Rebbe told Ambassador Avner. The message is that it's and the truth is, Rebbe said this in his opening for Bremen 1 year after the passing of the previous Rebbe. He said, if you think that my leadership is going to be basically easy and candies and chocolate and pizza, he didn't say it that way, I'm paraphrasing of course, well, you're wrong. We're going to have to work. This is a partnership. I'm going to be your Rebbe, but you also have to stand up to the plate, and you also have to do your portion. That's where it comes in when we say Tzivaot. that each and every one of us has the match. The Rebbe said, I'm going to give you the match, but you have to strike it. We have to do our effort to be part of Hashem's army, and it's not just given to us on a silver platter. I want to finish off my opening remarks with a story you can see it on YouTube, from Rabbi Weinreb, the executive director of Worldwide OU Emeritus, is that what it's called? Yeah. And he told me the story a few months ago when I asked him to please share me personally, and he told me the story himself, that when he was in his 30s, he was living in Silver Springs, Maryland, Washington area, and he was at a critical time in his life. He wasn't sure what the next stage is going to be, and he said that he was looking into psychology, and he wasn't sure if he should put his kids in a Jewish day school, and he was even having, he said this, I can say it too, he was even having some doubts in belief in Hashem, and he wasn't sure exactly who to speak to, what to do, and then he decided, I'm going to call Lubavitcher Rebbe. So he called the Rebbe's office, and he got through to Rabbi Chadikov, the Rebbe's chief secretary, chief of staff, and Rabbi Chadikov picks up the phone, Shalom, and he says, yes, hi. And then all of a sudden he hears someone else picking up the phone, and he knew it was the Rebbe because he knew the Rebbe's voice. The Rebbe said in Yiddish, "Wer ist das? Who is it?" And Rabbi Chadikov was sort of translating as if Rabbi Weiner didn't understand Yiddish. And he said, "A Jew from Silver Springs, Maryland. What would you like?" And he says, "Well, you see, I'm at a critical time in my life, and I'm not sure what to do, and I have questions in Emunah and education for my children." And so then the Rebbe says, and he said, when he tells the story, he said, "I did not tell the Rebbe my name. I just said a Jew from Silver Springs." So the Rebbe says, "Well, tell him, Yiddish, tell him that there's a Jew in Silver Springs by the name of Weinreb, and he should speak to him." Now, Rabbi Weinreb says he was totally shocked. Rabbi Chadikov said, "Did you hear the Rebbe?" So he said, "Well, I wanted to hear it again." So I said, "No." So the Rebbe said it again. He repeated after the Rebbe that there's a Jew in Maryland. His name is Weinreb, and he should consult with him. And Rabbi Weinreb tells over that since then, any time he had a serious dilemma what to do in his life, he thought of the Rebbe's words. Afterwards, he met the Rebbe personally, but this was such a powerful message, and that's the message of Tzvaot, not just Tzvaot Hashem. The message is that sometimes we have an answer within ourselves. We have to tune into ourselves because we have the answers. Hashem empowers us with so much koach, with so much energy, that we ourselves underestimate ourselves of the koach that we have. So if we just sometimes obviously we need a Rebbe, we need rabbis, and we need a Kadosh Baruch Hu. Kadosh Baruch Hu helps us, no question about that. But on a very deep level, each and every one of us, within ourselves, we have the answers. We just have to tune in and become a leader. As Chief Rabbi Jonathan Sachs says, that the Rebbe was a leader. There were many leaders, but the Rebbe was a leader. Most leaders have followers. The Rebbe was a leader who created leaders. That each and every one of us has the power to be Tzvaot, not just to be a soldier, but to be a general, to create other leaders. And this is a chidush, this is an innovative concept, and hopefully this is a very powerful message that we can take from Tu Bishvat. And we have over here with us three, not just soldiers, we have three very important generals. Each one of you, in your own lives, you're so special. We are very, very honored that you have agreed to come tonight to be able to share with us your special stories and how you were inspired to come closer to Yiddishkeit and Bezrat Hashem, as we're going to see soon. But because this is a Farbrengen, we are going to ask Mattisyahu Brown, together with Yeshaya David Greenberg, to please play for us the nigun of the previous Rebbe, which is called the Beinoni. And please listen along, and if you know the song, sing along. I would like to say a special bracha, a bruchim habayim, and welcome to a dear friend of Chabad Brachavia. His name is Mr. Aryeh King, who is a council member in the municipality of the city of Jerusalem. And I was talking to Mr. King about a month ago, and he said, I understand that you're involved very much with Olim Chadashim from around the world. And I would like to be I would like to help out to your Chabanos. And we decided that we're going to do a couple of events in connection with Tu Bishvat and Yud Shvat. And we had an event a couple of days ago for French speakers on Monday. And today we have a beautiful event for English speakers. And it is so heartwarming to know that there is someone that truly cares. And you might be aware, and if not, I'm going to tell you, that Aryeh King is number one in being a voice for Eretz Yisrael, and Am Yisrael, Torah Yisrael. Please put your hands together as I welcome Mr. Aryeh King to say a few words. Mattisyahu.
שבוע טוב, ערב טוב.
חג שמח.
חג שמח. For me, exactly like the way that Rabbi Goodman described it, as a son, Baruch Hashem, you can hear from my accent, as a son of British Olim, and even I'm a British citizen, so thank God, my parents made a good aliyah, meaning that the next generation is so disconnected from where they came from. And this is the whole point of a Chag like Tu Bishvat, the connection to Eretz Israel. We know the famous pasuk of Ki Adam Ech Hasadeh. The person is exactly like the tree that is growing and planted to the ground and growing from there. Shalom. I just mentioned my parents, but somebody here know my parents before I knew them. Nathan, shalom, shalom. Yeah, correct? It's your brother. Sometimes
Your dad was my madrich.
okay, so as I said, when the Rebbetzin and the Rav came to my office, and I asked them, how can I help? For me, it's really it's a mission. If you go to my office, not in the city council, not in the city hall, you will see that everybody that works in my office are Olim Chadashim. Because I think it's again one of the ways to be sure that people are making aliyah and staying here and planting the next generation in the city of Jerusalem or in Eretz Israel. And Tu Bishvat, as I said before, my parents, went to kibbutz, and you see, I'm still a kibbutznik, Baruch Hashem. And I'm saying it because for me, Tu Bishvat, it's really a chag that I return back to my roots in all aspects. And I think when you live in a city, you are disconnected a lot from the ground. You see all the time cement, you see buildings, you don't see the trees, you don't see the animals, you don't see the thing that HaKadosh Baruch Hu planted here much before we came here. And I'm happy to be part of building the city, but Tu Bishvat is a time to connect ourselves, to the trees, to everything that is growing from the Adamah, from the earth that we are living on. And Olim Chadashim, new immigrants, for them, I describe it like you take a tree from one place to another place. And it's much difficult than to have somebody when his child, when he was like me, I was born here, don't know what is England, Baruch Hashem, just as a visitor, but to take a tree and to replant it from one place to another, it's much difficult than to take a young tree and to plant it, because you need immediately to give him the strength, meaning the water, enough sun, everything from the same day. You planted him from one place to another, and it's exactly like you as Olim Chadashim. Some of you not so Olim Chadashim, not that you are not a Chadash, but even so, you are suddenly disconnected from where you came from, and we are here, I'm here, sorry, on behalf of, not myself, because I'm a representative of the city council, the municipality of Jerusalem, and one of the things that is important for us is to be sure that the trees, the beautiful trees, the young ones, the more senior ones, that we are replanting them from the States, from Canada, from England, from France, from everywhere, from Ethiopia. We bring them here to be sure that they are being planted here and they are getting from day one, from the first year, everything, so they will be enough strong to handle with the weather. You come from cold countries and suddenly you have here hot weather, suddenly you don't understand the language, so you need to, get around and to understand what the guy in the bank is telling you, or in the police is telling you, or in the municipality is telling you. And our goal in the city is to be sure to move, to do the best. You cannot do everything, but to do everything that, at least to try to do the maximum, that when you come here, you will be staying here forever and ever. And I just want to finish in wishing that everyone that made Aliyah will continue living here, and more than that, will bring the next trees, more and more trees, ki Adam etz hasadeh, to have here a pardes, an orchard of many Jews coming back to the Holy Land and to the Holy City. Chag Sameach.
Thank you very much, Aryeh King. Thank you so much. Okay, so we designed this evening into a couple. Basically, we're going to ask a couple of questions for each, and the esteemed panelists know the questions and we'll do one question at a time, and we'll try to get an answer from everyone. We'll try hopefully to keep it to a few minutes. We are very fortunate to have panelists that each one could have an event that could have a whole series of events just for their whole life story. But we're going to try to keep it concise as much as possible. And we would like to. Okay, so first let me present the question. The first question. First question is, please.
Introduce you.
Yes, of course. You're right. Okay. That's right. So I'm just going to say the names. I was going to This is Mr. Emmanuel Rand. This is Tamir Goodman and Mattisyahu Brown. And the first question that we're going to present to the panelists is as follows. Please share with us a concise synopsis of your amazing past, period. Question mark.
Toda Rabba for this evening, great evening, Rabbi Goldberg and Shoshi as a connector and the whole family and the whole Chabad house. It's also my yard site. My father died also Tu Bishvat, Tafshin Yud Zayin, 1957 here in Yerushalayim, and so it's also, so to say, my evening. I was born here in Yerushalayim, Mount Scopus. And that was my first Ness miracle, that when my mother brought me down as a 2 days old baby, and the Arabs were waiting in Sheikh Jarrah with machetes, trying to enter the armored buses. Once they entered, then they killed 68 doctors and nurses. So my mother and me, we survived it. We came to Rehavia, and but 2 days later, I didn't have any leaders. It was Shabbat HaShchora, Black Sabbath, in June 46, when the British arrested all of the leadership of Israel Jewish Agency. I'm very close to where we used to live. We lived on Arlozo, Pinat Aza, corner of Aza Street, but the British took us, 80 families from that area where Prime Minister's house is. They told us we have 24 hours to get our back out of our apartments, and we came here to Evelina de Rothschild, 80 families settled in the classroom. And during the war, I was once in a playpen in a balcony right here, and the Arabs were 400 yards from here shooting, and the whole balcony was full with bullets, but that was Hashem was watching for me. Once a bomb entered the shelter and the lady lost her legs and we just got injured. Anyhow, that's the beginning, Bereshit. I grew up here in Yerushalayim, and then I had the privilege of working for Kol Israel Radio, and then I had the privilege of being among the first team that started the Israeli television in 1968, and since I spoke Arabic, from the army, from school, from everywhere, I worked with everybody between the Jordan and the Suez Canal, interviewing and making programs. Then the Israeli television sent me to New York to send reports from the UN. Then I produced Israeli television in America in Hebrew and English. And I also interviewed people from the community, rabbis, leaders, Israeli journalists, diplomats. And once I invited the secretary of the Rebbe to come and tell us about Crown Heights, Lubavitch, etc. And 3 hours later, he went home. He's calling me and saying, Emmanuel, the Rebbe has to see you ASAP, as soon as possible. He wants you to teach him how do you make films, media, and television for Am Yisrael and Eretz Yisrael. So the next day, I davened Shachris already in Crown Heights, make sure I'm there. And then I was taken to the Rebbe's office. In 40 minutes, Yechidus, I was telling him, the Rebbe, how do I make film, television, and media. And then the Rebbe told me, after those 40 minutes, he told me, Emmanuel, you're doing great things for Am Yisrael and Eretz Yisrael, and you will continue to do it. But at some point you'll come to an enemy land and you will get hurt over there. But as he said, you'll go with Hashem and Hashem will go with you. 1980, I was commissioned by American government to educate all medical students in America to improve bedside manner in every category. The poor patient, the black patient, the child, the woman, you name 50 different categories. I always talk about ourselves, the chosen people, that out of 300 million Americans, they had to take me and my friend Jacob to produce those 50 films. And so it happened. By the way, I'm I'm Israeli citizen out of 9 million now. I'm Israeli citizen number 52,000. So pretty pioneer in Israel. Not that old, but and anyhow, back to America and the Rebbe. At some point, Israeli friends asked me to work in Hollywood to make crank features of their feature films. And I did. It was beautiful to work with Mike Douglas and Kirk Douglas and everybody over there. But one morning after Shachris, I meditated and realized I have to go back to make more films on social justice, like I've done a lot of them, many more than the 50 films, about 150 films. And I decided that 1980 it was, that I'm going to commit myself to make films only about the Holocaust, but first to help Holocaust survivors. So in New York, when I came from Hollywood to New York on the Upper West Side, there were 30 shuls, kollels, shtibelach, within 10 minutes from my home, Upper West Side, and I went to each one of them and I asked for survivors. And I realized that most of them didn't tell yet their story, even to their families. I decided I'm going to liberate them. So I started to help them one-to-one, organize groups at City College, because I was professor for film at Columbia University and NYU School of Visual Arts. So I got room in City College. So I told the survivors to meet me Sunday afternoon. 12 came the next week. They brought their friends. 50 Sunday later, 200. And then I couldn't do it anymore over there. Together with Rebetz and Yafa Eliach, family from Jerusalem, and Professor Randolph Brahms from City College, we organized the one and only gathering of Holocaust survivors in Washington, D.C., in the sports arena, 35,000 survivors. One evening, sitting together, hand in hand, and getting the craft, the koyach, the power to liberate themselves. Second liberation after the war. And then after I made, by that time, about 150 films and TV shows, I decided to make films only with survivors. I made 2 films with Elie Wiesel in New York, 1980, at home and in Spanish Harlem. And then I took survivors, brought them to Europe, and I made a film, altogether 15 documentaries and 8 feature films, all about the Holocaust, and Shoah Litkuma, also creation of Israel. And at some point I took survivors, family from Queens, New York, to Germany where they grew up, and all the time, and then I took them to a concentration camp to Theresienstadt in Czechoslovakia, where the family were for 3 years and survived, Baruch Hashem. And I made 3 films with them simultaneously, different target audience. And the long film, 82 minutes, called All Jews Out, was elected to the Oscars, 1990. So I had to screen the film in Los Angeles for 3 weeks in 3 movie theaters separately, and it was full with Academy members, many of them survivors. So I could hear all sobbing during the screening. When they left, many of them hugged me and said, "Thank you very much, Emmanuel, for speaking for us and the martyrs." And they gave me business cards and said, "Please, let's meet." And it was Dusha for me. I met all of them. And I met a lady by the name of Leah Adler, who I used to eat in a Milchige restaurant, Milky Way, in Los Angeles. And the owner was Leah Adler, who watched my film. And I found out she was the mother of Steven Spielberg. And then I told her, "Listen, Leah, you have so much nachas from his son, Steven Spielberg, but why didn't he make a Jewish film? It will be also so great." And she poked me. She said, "I'm seeing him 2 hours, and I'm giving ultimatum." Then he made the Schindler's List, where he got the Oscar in the hand. He said, "I made my film because of my mom," and the camera zooms on his mom, and I said, "Shkoyach, I made it." And and then I was in Germany for many, many years. As the Rebbe told me that I'll come to an enemy land, and that was Germany 5 years later. And I made all those films, and I was interviewed a lot on television, radio. Everybody in Germany knew me. I was the guy who was sitting with a kippah and, who came to make films about the Holocaust in Germany. So I had a collection of letters with swastikas. Dirty Jew, get out of our country, we'll get you, we'll kill you. Don't teach our kids about a Holocaust that never happened. And I was not afraid, I was with Hashem. As I was making those films in Germany, I was asked by the Central Committee of Jews in Germany to serve as a rabbi cantor because there weren't enough people over there. So I did that, and then 89, 90 came the Russian Jews to Germany, about 150,000, and they came without any Yiddishkeit. So that was a pleasure to be their rabbi and cantor in 15 different communities in Germany, synagogues, and they also cried on my shoulders, said, thank you, you remind me of my Bobe, singing the lullabies. And what I also did in Germany was that I hunted Nazis over there. On the free time, between making films and being rabbi cantor and screening my films 200 times and lecturing all over, I also hunted Nazis. And one of the first Nazis I hunted was when I finished my film All Jews Out, Alle Juden Raus, in Theresienstadt. I came across a German woman in Stuttgart who was part of the SS headquarters in that same concentration camp. I was able to get her to be in my film and to tell how terrible it was for the Jews over there. And she was the best friend, I would use those words, of Adolf Eichmann in Archimont. And she said whenever he came over to Theresienstadt for 4 days to organize deportation to Auschwitz, kill the Jews, she said it was so hard for him to register 8,000 Jews and make sure that the trains reaching Auschwitz when the ovens are ready and all of that. And so I became his friend. I don't want to explain exactly what kind of friend, but she spoke in my film, and that's also the reason why the film came to the Oscar. So altogether it was 15, and then as I played as an actor and consultant in 8 feature films as a rabbi cantor, which was also my role in normal life, in Germany, in Czechoslovakia, and Holland, and it was always beautiful to have a Chabad house, because, thank you.
Thank you very, very much. And now, Tamir Goodman, bevakasha.
Wow, that was very impressive. Good evening, everybody. Thank you very much. It's a great honor for me to be here, Rabbi Rebbitzin. Thank you for the opportunity. I grew up in Baltimore, Maryland. It's also very special for me to speak on Tu Bishvat because I grew up in a very exciting time for Chabad. I remember very, very clearly my father, of blessed memory, waking me up and saying, it's the Rebbe's Lag Bomer parade today. We're going to go to New York and see the Rebbe wave. And I remember when the Rebbitzin passed away, my father took us to the Rebbe's house. The Rebbe's, I think, was in his house for a year and got to get $1 from the Rebbe in his house. And I remember when they were lighting the big Chanukiah in front of the White House, my father saying, we have to go, and it was just like such a great Jewish pride, such a great way to grow up. But if I had to sum up how I really grew up, I would say I grew up in a very supportive and loving home. I fell in love with basketball at a very young age, and one day I was shooting around in my backyard and I just stopped and I looked at my hands and I said, wouldn't it be really cool if you could show the world that you could get a Division I scholarship to play college basketball and a professional contract to play professional basketball without playing on Shabbat? That's what I thought in my head when I was 10 years old, and I said, I think I'm going to go for it. I really want that to happen. And I was very blessed that there was a coach that lived in our neighborhood, and I started jogging in front of his house, hoping that he'd come outside and teach me some drills, and he did. And we worked very, very hard, and by the time I was 17 years old, I was ranked the 25th best high school basketball player in all of America, averaging almost 40 points a game, and I landed a scholarship to play for the University of Maryland. At the time, they had the #1 team in the country, and I looked at my high school coach and I said, why would I want to go anywhere else? Let's accept this and play for University of Maryland. So we had a meeting with the coaching staff, and I said, Coach, I'm ready to play at Maryland. This is my favorite team. I'm from Maryland, but I can only play here on one condition. I can't play on Shabbat because I'm Jewish. And originally they said they would accommodate me, and my life changed overnight. I had 700 media requests that week. ABC, NBC, CBS, Jerry Seinfeld did a full skit about me on Saturday Night Live. Howard Stern called my house, but my parents didn't let me talk to him. And, the next day, Sports Illustrated called up, and they said that they were going to come watch me play, and they were so impressed. They nicknamed me the Jewish Michael Jordan, and they said they were going to put a 4-page article about me in Sports Illustrated. So they sent an NBA photographer to my house, and he told me that millions of people are going to see this article. So I said, you know, this whole basketball thing, this really isn't about me. It's really about the Jewish people in Israel, and I'd like to represent that. So even though he wasn't Jewish, he said, how can you do that? And I ran down to my room. It was the afternoon, and I'd already prayed that day, but I took out my tefillin and I put them back on, and I said, well, this is how Jewish people pray. So he took a picture, and I was the first person to ever be in Sports Illustrated with my tefillin on. But then it came time for me to play at Maryland. And as I started training there, the coach called me into his office and he said, Tamir, it's almost time for you to play here. Based on how we see things moving forward, we decided that you're going to have to start to play on Saturdays. And I said, Coach, thank you so much for the opportunity, but for Jewish people, Shabbat's more important than basketball. And I gave him back the most sought-after basketball scholarship in the country. And the basketball fans in this room probably will remember that the University of Maryland went on to win the national championship that year. I would have been on that team, and I was stuck without a team, but I had Shabbat, and I felt like I made the right decision. One day, I got a phone call from Towson University. It's a Division I school in Baltimore, Maryland. And the coach said, you won't believe this, I'm not Jewish. Nobody on this team is Jewish, but the guys on the team asked me to come recruit you. They read about you in the paper, and they wanted to find out if there's any way you could be a part of our team. What would it take? So he came to my house, this Division I coach, and my father, blessed memory, came out with a big Chabad Rosh Hashanah calendar that we used to get in the beginning of the year. And he started to explain to the non-Jewish coach when I can play and when I can't play. All the Chagim, all the times of Shabbat. And Rosh Hashanah, can't play, Yom Kippur, can't play, Sukkot, can't play, one by one. And the coach says, I think I got it. And he goes to the head of the NCAA and the head of our conference and says, is there any way that you can change the entire schedule? Flights, TV contracts, hotel reservations, game scheduling, all for one incoming Jewish athlete that wants to wear his kippah on the court. And the NCAA agreed, and I became the first person ever to play Division I basketball on a full athletic scholarship without having to play on Shabbat or any Jewish holiday. The reason that I say I grew up in a very supportive and loving home is because even though my mother really did, still doesn't know anything about basketball, I finally got there and I was able to play college basketball. And speaking of the Holocaust, I grew up in Maryland, but my Savta, of blessed memory, she would spend 6 months out of the year with us, and she was my favorite person in the world. She just passed away last year. And she would visit us from Israel every year. And at this point in my life, I'm already playing college basketball. So when you're playing college basketball, okay, you think about hundreds of thousands, maybe millions of kids that are playing high school basketball, and only, I think, 1,000 a year out of all of America get a Division I scholarship. So you're playing at like the highest possible level. And as you can imagine, practice is very, 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 very intense. An hour and a half even before the coach comes on the court to start practice, you need to already be sweating and showing coach that you're ready. And he walks in and you're good to go. Your body is like, and is a level you can't even imagine the intensity, right? And one day I'm at practice, at this high level, and the coach keeps on teasing me about my grandmother. Are you going to play, or is your grandmother going to shoot for you today? Your grandmother. After practice, I call home, as I always call home, and my mother says, how was practice? I said, it was okay, but, coach was yelling at me. And she says, she's Israeli, she says in a Hebrew accent, I don't believe it. I said, why? She said, because I called your coach, my college Division I coach, before practice, and I told him not to yell at you today because Safta's going back to Israel, and I knew that you were going to be a little sad. And I said, please don't ever call my coach again. And but that just sums up how I grew up. No matter where I was playing, no matter where I was, my parents were always there to support me and love me. And also Rabbi Weinreb used to support me a lot when I was younger in Maryland. So being here tonight on a day where we remember the Rebbe's teachings in this beautiful show, beautiful people, thank you. Honored to be here.
And now, בבקשה, Mattisyahu Brown.
I was born a poor black child. No. Also, I had a supportive family, loving support. I could do anything I wanted. I could become anyone I wanted. My father was a Protestant minister. So are my grandfathers. And one of my ancestors, his name was Samuel Worcester, who he was in seminary in Yale long time ago. And not sure the date, but it was the time of the emancipation of the African Americans. They asked him to dedicate his life to helping the African Americans, and he said, actually, my friend is a Native American, and they're about to be pushed out of here. So he walked ahead of the Trail of Tears. He became sort of their leader. He became their rabbi, so to speak. He went to jail because he felt so one with his people. And when it came time for him to leave jail, he was put into jail by Ulysses Grant. That'll be the date. So when they were going to release him from jail, he said, "I'm not going until my people are free." My people. My people. And they gave him a special name that means the messenger. So knowing this growing up, like I had some kind of a spiritual, I don't know what, mission or something like that. The church that we grew up in was not a very spiritual thing at all. It was the sweet music, and it was nice music. And but I got into sports and art and music, and I was a junior Olympian skier, cross-country skier. I'm from Minnesota, by the way. This is how we talk. Not from Brooklyn like the rest of y'all. Or whatever, sorry. I know you're from everywhere. So I went to college in Vermont, and I became a modern dancer. And which was a very deep sort of spiritual path for me. I felt it was about altered states of consciousness, which was what I was very eager to study. And at the end of college, I went to New York City to perform, and there I met my wife, who I'm married to today, a Jewess. Direct line from David Melech. We can show exactly all the way back to Adam Arishon, I guess. But I met her in a Sufi mosque. I was a seeker, okay? She was a seeker too. And together we started exploring the world's religions. From the Dalai Lama to Zen, sitting still for an entire week, in silence. Things like that. But I knew she was Jewish, and there was something like amazing about that. One of our best friends was getting married, and they met in college, also at Hillel of UMass, and so she had become religious, which is interesting too. I met this person, and she was having her wedding in Crown Heights. She was studying at Bachon Khan, I guess. And this wedding was, I suppose a lot of people have been to Chabad weddings, maybe a 770 and the hall over there. But that blew my socks off. and it started like, I had Hasidim in my dreams and dancing and nigunim in my dreams. It was just like taking me over. And what happened? Soon after that, we were working, my wife and I were at the Sufi bookstore, which is like an interfaith bookstore selling books from all the religions. And one day in walks this Hasid. I recognized him because, recognize the dress. Just like that. And he comes in and he reads a whole he must have some kind of like photographic memory or something. He's turning pages. He went through the entire story. He read the entire story. But like he would come once a week and would spend a couple hours, but he started with this section, went all the way around. And he would just walk out. He wouldn't say anything. He would just disappear after that. Later, this became my rabbi. Like about I guess 7 years later, that was Dr. Pinson. Yeah. I became his editor and his gabbai for a while before moving here. Let's see. So back in the bookstore, like I'm begging my wife to light Shabbos candles in the bookstore. So it's like something had come over me. I don't know what it was. I remembered in college, I had gone home for the winter holidays, and I was sitting on the sofa, and I opened the Minneapolis Star and Tribune, and there was a picture of a little girl lighting the Hanukkah menorah with her father's hand guiding her hand. And I just burst out into tears, and I cried for a half hour. I have no idea. This was before, meeting Rachel and everything. They say a ger comes with a gayer. In other words, the person was already a convert before they converted. This is what the Torah says. So a ger has a Jewish soul, and it has to go through all these maybe turns and experiences and maybe little revelations, difficult experiences, feeling out of place. And gradually, there's many stages of that, that story, but let's say when our Sufi teacher passed away, I know he had interviewed Shlomo Karlebach on the radio, and so I wanted to go to the Karlebach show to see what that was about. And so I left. I was working at the Buddhist magazine, and on Friday night I went over there, and again, the singing Lucha Dodi, and I just bawled the entire time. I was like a basket case, but it was bitter tears. It was like I had been missing something here for my entire life, and I had no idea. That didn't make any sense. I was a spiritual seeker, and I had spiritual experiences and things like that, but this was like bitter, and like I was being wrung out. So after a couple weeks of going there, I asked Rachel to come with me. And first she was like, no, but okay, she did. We started going there more and more. The kindness of the people there was so extraordinary. And so we started going more and more. We had hospitality after we stopped traveling, and then actually I was studying. I came here 20 years ago to Nachlaot to visit some of the people that we met at the Karlebach Shul, and I knew in my heart I was going to live here, but it made no sense. I wasn't Jewish. And so we went home. It was like tearing a limb off, going home from your first time, Your first time you have to go home, back to the United States from here. It's like tearing a limb off your body. Let's see, where am I? Amazing. Okay, so I, Baruch Hashem, I converted with the Beis Din of Crown Heights about 19 years ago, and I studied in Kollel with Dr. Pinson, and right away they heard me singing in harmony, I guess, in shul, and they made me the cantor, so I started leading high holidays, and I was leading every Shabbos and all of the Sholosh Regalim and high holidays. I still go back. I fly back to America to lead the prayers. There are enough Bali to feel like here. We don't need. And
We need you.
yeah. And so we wanted to live here, but didn't see how it was going to happen. And we were trying to find a place in Sharon, Massachusetts, which used to be a 70% Jewish city outside of Boston town. Yeah. Sharon. See, 70%. That's a representation. And but then we got an email. There's a kollel. You can get a stipend. You can study for a few years, and you can even get smicha if you really go for it. And so we did that, and I finished the program, and Rachel said we're staying. So the halakha is that you have to stay.
Toda rabba, yasher koach. Before we go on to the next question, I want to introduce a very special person, Yonatan Yosef, who is a partner with Aryeh King, and together they're helping us that this event should be possible. Toda rabba, yasher koach, toda rabba, I believe your grandson was Rabbi Avad Yosef, your father was Rabbi Yaakov. Wow, also very, very special Rav, and that's Tichel B'avodat HaKodesh. Harbe Hatzlacha. Okay, before we go on to the next question, we wanted to have a niggun, right?
Oh yeah.
Yes, are we ready for a niggun? Because just to stick in a little Farbrengen, and then it's going to get more interesting.
You want to put up that? Whatever you want. What? Come over.
2 or 3 minutes, and then we're going to continue.
Okay. Sure.
Thank you very, very much. This is a classical story. There's a guy and in Kfar Chabad, and he was born here in Eretz Yisrael, and his father called him Nimrod. And so he became observant, became Chabad, and people were telling him, change your name. You can't have a name like Nimrod. He was the one that tried to kill Avraham Avinu. Nimrod means the Torah itself. Nimrod means to rebel against Hashem. And so he wrote a letter to the Rebbe and asked Rebbe, should I be changing my name? The Rebbe said, don't change your name. Keep your name. and you can just change around the meaning. In other words, instead of, God forbid, rebelling against Hashem, you're going to be rebelling against anything which is against holiness and Kedusha. And that is one of the Rebbe's beautiful ways of looking at the world. That Hashem created a world with so many pieces to the puzzle. And each and every one of us has our job, has our tafkid. As you see, our amazing state panelists, each one is so special. And we have to, the Rebbe's opinion was always to use your talents to be able to serve Hashem in a better way. And so this brings us to the next question. And we'd like to know if you could please share with us at least one anecdote, how you are able to use your talents for Kedusha and using it and making the world a better place in Tikkun Olam. B'vakasha. Okay. We'll start with you. Move around this way. No pressure. Feel the best. If you don't have an answer, also.
So during winter break, when you're on a basketball team in college, nobody's really on campus except for the basketball team. And during when you're a student athlete, they have to give you a certain amount of time during the week that you have to study. There's NCAA regulations, so practice can't be too long because you have to do well in school. But during winter break, there's no classes, so the coaches really push that time of year to practice a lot and play a lot of games. And we were traveling around playing a lot of games, and we finally landed in Baton Rouge, Louisiana, to play against Louisiana State University, one of the premier basketball programs in the world. And it takes a while for the guys to get their stuff off the plane. I had a cooler of kosher food. That's how I traveled. I had a cooler of kosher food, and I got my stuff off, and I was waiting outside the airport, and I'm sitting on the cooler of kosher food, and I'm thinking to myself, I haven't even seen a Jewish person in over a week. I'm very lonely. And one of my teammates comes over to me. His name was Kerry Jr., okay? And we always had a funny relationship. Why? Because usually in Judaism, we don't really name our kids after our father. Like, I'm Tony Jr., he was Tony Sr., right? We just usually don't do that. So my first day in the locker room, every player introduced themselves to each other, and he comes over to me, he's like, hi, he's 6'8", he's like, how you doing? My name is Kerry Jr. So I said to him, oh, do they call you Kerry Jr. because you're not like a freshman or a sophomore or a senior? And like, since then, like, everybody on the team would always tease me about that. So he would always joke with me. So we had this funny relationship, and I'm sitting outside on the cooler in Baton Rouge, Louisiana, and he taps me on the shoulder and he says, your people are inside the airport, which means he saw a Jewish person. And I said, Kerry, please, I'm feeling really lonely as it is. There's no Jewish people in Baton Rouge, Louisiana. Please leave me alone. He comes back 5 minutes later and he says, your people are in the airport. And I said, nah, believe me. Third time, he says, I'm telling you. I said, I see what's going on. I go inside the airport, and he's right, there's a Lubavitcher Shliach in the airport. And I said, Rabbi, I haven't seen a Jewish person in over a week. I am so happy to see you. And I jump up and I give this rabbi a bear hug. And he opens up his kapata, I'll never forget it, and he pulls out of the inside pocket a kosher cream cheese sandwich. He gives me the sandwich, and he disappeared. It was like Eliyahu Navi. I have no idea where it is till today. But I really needed that hug from him because playing against LSU, Louisiana State University, was the most non-Jewish environment that I've ever experienced. First, they take you on campus, and they're called the LSU Tigers, right? So their mascot is a tiger. So usually in basketball, you have like someone dressed up like a tiger. But at LSU, they have a real tiger. A real tiger. And they have a tzedakah box there to raise money to build them a bigger cage. And they take you to see the tiger. And then they take you to the museum, and you can see all the great players that played there. Shaquille O'Neal played there. Pistol Pete Maravich played there. All these amazing players. So you feel really intimidated even before the game starts. And then finally the game starts, and you're in this world-famous arena. And usually in college basketball, the student section is the loudest section. That's where the fans are the rowdiest. So the student section started a chant as soon as I walked into the building. Where did number 22 get that hat from? and the other side of the student section would say, the rabbi, the rabbi. So for 2 hours during the game, you have the student section screaming about my kippah, making fun of me. But I said, I'm not going to say anything to the referee. I'm not going to say anything to the fans. I'm just going to play the best I can play. And I played the best that I could play. They beat us. Coach was like, take a shower, put on your travel suit. We're going to get out of here. So I take a shower, put on my travel suit, and I'm exiting the arena. And I'm about to go on our team bus. And as I'm going on the team bus, I noticed that many of the fans that were screaming about my kippah, making fun of me, were in front of our bus, in front of a visiting team's bus, which was very, very weird. So I said, you know what, I don't want anything to do with these guys. They've been making fun of me the whole night. I'm going to sprint onto the bus, and that'll be it. But as I go onto the bus, they block the doors of my bus, and they won't let me get on the bus. So I get nervous for a second. What do these guys want? They were laughing at me the whole game, and now they don't even let me get on our bus. So I was pretty nervous for a second. But all of a sudden, the guy who was leading the chants comes up to the front of all the fans, and he sticks out his hand. And he says to me, on behalf of all of us right here, I just want to shake your hand. Because even though we made fun of you and we laughed at your hat all night long, you never took it off your head. So congratulations. And, I got back on the bus, and I thought to myself, wow, we lost the game tonight. You know, they beat us. But for the Jewish game, I think we got to win tonight, because if there's ever going to be another Jewish player to play at LSU, hopefully that player won't have to go through what I went through. So, Tikkun Olam, try to do a proud Jew.
Thank you, Tamir. עמי, בבקשה.
תודה רבה. Tikkun Olam is when I made, sorry, I'm not so funny like the other two. I have some stories, but Tikkun Olam is, I created a couple of revolutions in this world, and Hashem always showed me the way to do it. I'm the one who created inclusion of handicapped or so-called retarded into mainstream, made a film about it, and the John F. Kennedy Center for Education took my films, screened it all over the world, and helped all those people who were imprisoned in their homes because they were different. I was able to liberate them. That was Tikkun Olam and Or LaGoyim. Kedusha, there is Kedushat HaAdam, Kedushat HaIr. I've done all of those Kedushot. Kedushat HaIr, I was fighting here, defending Yerushalayim, the 6-day war, and then on the Golan Heights, so we defended our Eretz HaKodesh, Eretz HaKedosha. Kedusha, I lived a lot. My late wife was from Crown Heights, so I used to go a lot to Fabrayans, so I used to spend lots of time over there in Crown Heights. And yeah, so much of my life it was like, yeah, like one anecdote. My aunt, my father's sister from Berlin, she was in the resistance against the Nazis. She was deported with the last deportation, March 43, and we made a feature film about it, about my aunt, and 1 week of getting deported in a train from Berlin to Auschwitz, 1 week without food, without water, without sanitation. And we made that film. We shot it in Prague. I was a guest of Rabbi Barash, Chabad over there. And the production, they knew that I don't work on Shabbat. So they had to work around it, that all the scenes with me will be during the week. But one day, after 3 weeks of shooting, they came to me and said, Emmanuel, sorry, but we have to work on Shabbat because there's some scenes we cannot work around it. I said, no, I told you from the beginning, I cannot. And then we fought back and forth, and I said, no way that I'll work. What happened? Then the production decided they'll give all the 200 actors and team and extras Shabbat off because they cannot shoot. So they all came and hugged me and said, thank you very much. So I don't know how many converts I created over there. And by the way, I used to play basketball, but only here in Jerusalem, and we won the high school league. And Yeah, so there are similarities, but
תודה רבה, יישר כוח. מתיסיהו, בבקשה.
Tikkun olam. It's a very Kabbalistic concept. We think it means doing social action, but actually means bringing Mashiach. I don't know. Once I was leading Friday night davening, and afterwards I spoke with somebody who was very moved. She had tears in her eyes, and she said to me that I was walking by the shul, and I was not planning to go in. I was planning to kill myself, God forbid. And I heard there was so much happiness and joy and beautiful nigunim and harmonies and dancing. I said, go in. It sounds exciting. She went in, and it completely cleared her mind of where she was and made a tikkun in her nefesh, God willing. And so it's a very touching thing. I think we all can do something like that. You know, we don't know how many people we're touching, but if we have something like something that we can offer, it's really important that we do offer that.
Beautiful. Thank you very, very much. Speaking about the previous Rebbe, it was his yard site today, Tu Bishvat, and the previous Rebbe came to America on the 9th day of Adar, 1940, in spring, in March. And as soon as he came with a few of his Chassidim, and they settled in Brooklyn. And the next morning, he made a statement. And in America, they make statements. If you make a statement, then you're already something. So he made a statement in Yiddish. America is nicht anders. America is no different. In other words, you might be aware that those that immigrated to America 100 years ago, 150 years ago, it was very, very hard to stick to the Yiddishkeit. I remember one of the elder Chassidim where I grew up in Toronto, and he said he grew up in New York, and his grandfather was one of the only people who didn't work on Shabbos, because it was if you didn't work on Shabbos, you didn't have a job, and there was barely anything to eat, anything to support your family. It's amazing to hear these stories, the Shabbos stories. It wasn't simple, but the previous Rebbe said America is no different. We're going to build the same yeshivas over here. We're going to build the same shuls, the same enthusiasm, the same neshama, the same warmth as we had in the Alte Shtetl in Europe. It's going to be over here. And the next day, a couple of delegations of rabbis, leading rabbis in New York, they came to me and they said, you know what, it's very nice that you're here. We're very happy. A lot of them came to greet him at the port. They said, you know what, it's a little different over here. Calm down. It's not the same. It's not Barsha anymore. This is New York City. Sorry, we're gonna keep this flame alive, and this is perhaps a similar point as what we discussed up until now. But is there anything that you can share with us, an experience that you've encountered either through your travels or people that you've met, that people have shared with you a story where once again they felt that to keep in any situation to be able to keep the flame of the neshama alive, maybe it was in a Chabad house. Maybe something that you've heard a story from the Rebbe or another inspiring story. Is there something that you can share with us? B'vakasha.
The story is actually in this book, which I recommend to everyone. Positivity Bias. Have you seen it?
Yes. Rabbi Collins.
Yeah, Rabbi Collins. I merited somehow to edit one of the last editors on the book. I think there were a couple of editors. When I read this story, it reminded me of a dream, and I want to tell the dream too. That the Rebbe believed so much that joy in itself is a mitzvah. That joy could actually, my previous story is that joy saved this woman's life. And there was a farbrengen where the Rebbe turned to Meir Avicera, who I met when he was alive. He was standing off to the side, and the Rebbe turned to him. There was singing and clapping, and he went like this. with his fingers. And Reb Meir was like, he's not asking me to whistle. I mean, that's looked down upon, you know, like, Hasidim don't whistle. And he did it again. And so Reb Meir went, and the Rebbe's face lit up. Must be the whistle. So he said the first time he whistled, he just went to another world. And soon there were hundreds of people whistling as an expression of pure joy, of joy that breaks through all the boundaries. And it went on for a long time. He said the last whistle was like a shofar blast, a rehearsal for the redemption. So a photographer had actually snapped a picture of the Rebbe doing this. And that was sent out into a widely circulated Jewish newspaper. And so it got a lot of flack. And people were like, that's not becoming of a chassid, that's not becoming of a Rebbe. And a few months later, he gave a talk about it. And he said, like, I thought someone by now would have found some sources to show that whistling in this way is a holy thing. If it can lift somebody up, if it can give someone simcha shel mitzvah, the joy of doing a mitzvah, it's greater than anything else. Joy is like the all-encompassing mitzvah. So when I read this story, I suddenly reminded myself, I suddenly remembered a dream that I had before I converted to Judaism, which was I was on the F train in Brooklyn, and right across from me was sitting the Lubavitcher Rebbe. Right, he didn't do that. Also, he didn't have a kippah on and he was clean shaven, but I knew it was him. I really didn't know it was him. And I said, Rebbe, I'm like a postmodern person. Like, how can I fit into a religious box? I'm not going to wear like a hat. I'm not going to wear a jacket. What do you think I'm going to believe in, like conservative religious beliefs or something? And he started laughing at me. And he laughed stronger, and then I started laughing. And then he laughed stronger, and I laughed stronger. I was crying. I was laughing so hard. I was sobbing until the whole world sort of disappeared into the light of laughter and Purim, you know? And when I woke up, there was a puddle on my pillow because I actually was laughing in my sleep. So the dream meant a couple things to me. Number one, the Rebbe is not just a religious leader. The Rebbe is way beyond that. He could appear to you in different ways. He appeared to me in that time of my life in a way that I could see him, in a way that he could lift me up. And I challenge us to see not just the clothing, not just the teachings that are the highest teachings in the world, but to go even beyond that, to see someone's essence, and to see, God willing, to have an appreciation of the essence of what the Rebbe was, beyond all conception. There's nothing you can say about it.
I heard a story, result of a project that I did, Revolution in Germany. I knew that at some point there will be chancellor in Germany, Shelo Yada et Yosef, and will be against Jews and Israel. Or even that Angela Merkel will be, and she did change a lot, not so much pro-Israel. I decided about 30 years ago that I would like to create in Germany a cadre, a generation of young Germans will be pro-Jews, pro-Israel over there fighting for us. I found out every time, about 200 times that I screened my films in Germany, came to me youngsters and they complained that they suffer psychologically because of what their grandparents, the Nazis, did, and nobody helped them. I decided I would like to help them. So I took groups of young Germans to Israel. I made with them 5 films. And when the films played in Germany, thousands of young Germans flocked to Israel as a healing for their problem, but for me it was that they come here to hug survivors, go to Yad Vashem, tour the country, become our friends. Now, those who came back to Germany and Europe are now the only ones who go with Israel flag against the demonstrations of BDS, Palestinians, Muslims, Nazis. The others who came to Israel and stayed here, some of them stayed here. So the story that I heard and found out, some of them converted and they study in yeshivas now. So these are grandchildren of Nazis who become rabbis. And that was the continuity to 2,500 years ago. We learned in Midrash that the descendants of Haman studied in Batei Knesiot and synagogues in Bnei Brak, so I continued. Now the thing is, what I did in Germany, whenever I was every place there, it was dangerous to give my name and address. But I told the people in Germany, 200 movie theaters, church communities, universities, I told them that I came for a dialogue. And I would like them to call me if they have any question or if they want to tell me. Some of them told me about Nazi neighbors. Some of them told me that they feel Jewish, and I found out they were halakhic Jews, and all kind of things. But there were also Nazis in the crowd sometimes. But I used to put the posters of my films with my name, my telephone number, address, encouraging people to get in touch with me. And that's what I do here. I continue the tradition. That's what I used to do. If anybody want to tell me something or to ask further question, you can copy that.
Or just send me a message. And I'll...
Right, whatever. And so
Don't worry.
I'm glad that I heard feedback. My films reached billions of people. Just one film played in 53 countries. So you can imagine how many. And I'm glad that this was Tikkun Olam to help people and make the Kedusha.
Thank you very, very much. Tamir,
Just really quick lessons, two quick lessons that I always really had in my head when I was an active player. A lot of times I was scared the night before a game, like if we were playing against like a really good team and the game was like going to be on ESPN, and I was nervous that I wasn't going to be good enough to play well, or I was scared I wasn't going to play well. So I would always call my father, and he'd always say to me the same thing every time. He said, "Did you daven this morning?" And I said, "Yeah, I davened this morning." So he said, "Well, if you have enough courage to stand up in front of Hashem, then you don't need to be scared of anybody else in this world." And sometimes Hashem would help me by sending me little messages, because the night before we played against Villanova, which is a leading team, the game was also on ESPN. The night before the game, my coach notified me in the hotel room that I was going to be a starter, that I was starting in the game, and I couldn't sleep the whole night. I actually had my teammate, my roommate, his name was Muhammad, he was a Muslim basketball player, and the next day we got to Villanova, and about 2 hours before the game, I can't get confident, and the ball doesn't feel, you're supposed to be one with the ball. Your hands are supposed to be one with the ball, and I don't feel it. And they had a senior point guard, and I'm a freshman point guard, and I wasn't feeling confident. But about 2.5 hours before the game, usually the fans aren't there yet. It's only the players warming up. But I noticed in the layup lines that there was a Jewish lady in the top of the arena. And I stopped and I looked up at her, and we connected eye to eye, and I noticed that she was there with her son, 10, 11-year-old boy who was wearing his kippah at Villanova. And then I looked at the boy, and we connected eye to eye, and all of a sudden the boy takes out a poster board at Villanova, and he takes out a marker, Sharpie, and he starts writing on the poster board Hebrew letters at Villanova. And he starts making a bet, and he eventually wrote it all out in Hebrew, Bruchim Habayim le Tamir Goodman. Welcome to Tamir Goodman. And when I saw the Hebrew letters, I said to myself, wow, whoever saw Hebrew letters at at Villanova. And the letters made me feel at home, and I wasn't nervous anymore, and I had a great game, and after the game the coach says, by the way, you're going to be starting the rest of the year. So that was lesson number one that my father taught me, that I always try to live with. Never, you don't have to be scared. If you daven to Hashem, you don't need to be scared of any players in the world. Number two was, there was a big chassid, his name was Rabbi Mendel Futterfass, and I remember hearing as a kid, this one quick story, but it always helped me a lot, was that he never had to work on Shabbos, even when he was at the labor camps. And other prisoners used to say, hey, how did you get a day off? And he said, well, if you prove yourself during the 6 days a week, they're going to leave you alone on the 7th. So I always decided that I was going to be the hardest working guy on the team, practicing the hardest, because I knew that they were leaving me alone on the 7th day. I really had to prove myself during 6 days a week. So those were the two lessons that I kind of lived with throughout my playing career. But the most modern lesson that happened to me most recently was this past year before my savta passed away. Like I told you, I grew up with my savta. She was the closest person to me. And throughout my entire life, we always just viewed savta as like superwoman. Like she was just superwoman. Like she was just always happy, always strong. She rode a bicycle deep into her 80s, and even when she was 9 years old, she was cooking and baking and carrying her food 4 flights for her friends that couldn't even walk anymore. And she was just like this amazing lady. And then before she passed away, I just had like a minute alone with her in her salon. And I said to her, I said, Savta, you know, how are you like always so happy and positive and giving, and you know, you, even though you were in the camps for 4 years, like how does that, you know, you've had the biggest tragedy in the world and you're always amazing, like how is that possible? And she said to me, you know, it was the first time she ever said to me in my life, she says, you know, every single day I actually think about what happened, and I've always chose to be positive, and I always choose to think in a good way, even though the negativity is always there. We just thought her whole life she's just a superwoman, she doesn't feel anything, but right before she passed away, she let me know that she feels everything, but she chooses for it not to let her affect her. And I think like me now, as like, you know, thank God I have a wife and 5 kids, and you know, life has all sorts of like challenges and stuff, and everyone has internal struggles, external struggles, challenges and everything, that we should always try to roll our sleeves up and move forward and always try to be as positive as possible.
Thank you very much. We're about to come now to the final question, and before I tell you the question, I want to tell you a little story. I think Yonatan will like the story. One of the senior Chabad rabbis here in Yerushalayim, his name is Rabbi Naftali Roth, a very, very prominent educator, and he joined us in Elul for our Chnasat Sefer Torah. And so he tells a story. He once brought a couple of people to the Rebbe's Farbrengen to New York, and this was an individual who did not understand Yiddish. And he's sitting by the Rebbe's Farbrengen, the Rebbe spoke in Yiddish, and he's sitting there, and he's shaking his head as if he understands the whole Farbrengen. And so at the end of the Farbrengen, Rabbi Roth says to him, it's very nice that you're taking part, but did you really understand the Farbrengen? He says, you know what? There were a few words that the Rebbe kept saying again and again and again. Hama'asehu ha'ikar. And the bottom line is the practice. We have to do the deed, the bottom line. And that's what the Rebbe was all about. What's the bottom line? What comes out from all of this inspiration? Is there going to be, are we going to be able to better ourselves and to embody within ourselves the message that was discussed? And this is the bottom line of this special evening. We want to know if you could please, each and every one of you, to please share with us a couple of tips and ideas that all of us can also be champions, that all of us can also be stars in our own life, whether it's in our personal lives, or it's in our community life, or in our business, or in our apartment where we live, in our building. How can we make a positive change? Please give us one or a couple of tips. B'vakasha.
Okay, the rabbi was right. One way the world is divided is into 2 groups: those who producers, and the consumers. Some of us, very few, produce things for the world, like the rabbi did, rabbis do, leaders do. They work hard to create a better world. Most of the people are consumers. They just get whatever they get. And I educate lots of youngsters into leadership, to get out of their skin and stop doing things only for themselves, their family and friends, but to do also things for the kehillah, for the city, for the country, and possibly for the world. And it takes hard work to be able to produce, to do things, to change the world, to do tikkun olam. Everybody can do it, just a matter of deciding to do it. Takes the time and the hardships that go with it, and to do maaseh, to do things, and also people should read Pirkei Avot. If they'll read Pirkei Avot, we'll have a better world. People should learn also about communication. Rabbi Israel Goldberg, every time I write him SMS or WhatsApp or whatever, within 5 seconds I get an answer. You don't get it everywhere. Try it, send him WhatsApp. No, communication is very important. I used to teach courses in universities about communication. Even, for example, how to write a business card. Most business cards are bad for many reasons. I don't want to get into it. Or how to write or read telephone number. Many people don't know it. It's a long story, but the main thing is how to communicate and always to think about the other. And also that's a major thing. Think about the other. How many of us hear radio station, Kol Israel, and the announcer is not thinking about us. He's telling us that text would be like this. Tomorrow we are going to have an event. Telephone on the 751-7672. And if who can write it? Some stations, some people think about us, the listeners, and say, okay, I'm going to give the phone number, and then they say it slowly and twice. Again, try always to put yourself in the shoes of the other person. Think who he or she is, and that's part of it. The rest I'll give you a workshop next time. But
Thank you very, very much.
Just a couple of things that I try to think about every day. Number one, my coach always used to say, you're never as good as you think you are when you win, but you're never as bad as you think you are when you lose. When you're in a playoff series, like it's usually like a best of 7, so or a best of 5, so you have the first team to win 3 is the team that advances, but great coaches always say like one game at a time. Like a lot of times in life we feel really overwhelmed. If you're feeling really overwhelmed, or I'm feeling overwhelmed, I just start by doing one thing, and you start by doing one thing. Like I say, mitzvah b'lev mitzvah. Like once you're on the right path, like things start flowing. So never feel overwhelmed. Just start by one thing at a time. Take care of your body. I feel like when you're physically feeling really good about yourself, it's much easier for you to be positive to other people and positive to yourself, and it helps eradicate like jealousy or things like that, or lashon hara. Another thing is like I always feel like Hashem is good enough to bless everybody. Like we don't ever feel like we need to be in competition with other people. Hashem could give each person enough parnassah that they need. We don't need to have competition and grudge. We could always take the high road and spend as much time with your spouse as you can, or your family, and everyone who doesn't should be blessed to be surrounded by people that love them and good relationships, because when you have good relationships, it makes you a really happy person.
I'm sure everyone here davens every day. I would like to suggest preparing for davening. In our sages, the Hasidim Rishonim would wait for an hour showing. They would wait an hour before davening, and then they would daven for an hour. And the pshat is that they would actually wait. They would not do anything. They would just meditate and direct their minds to their Father in heaven. Our Rebbeim say another way to do this is to study Chassidus. If you can study a little bit of Chassidus before you daven in the morning, ideal. Awaken the fire with something special that you learn, and then your davening will be totally different. If it's going to be on this level, read a little story from a book like this. If you're a little bit more scholarly, this is called Lessons in Maimarim, and it's an excellent. It's got Basti Lagani in it, actually. Excellent because it takes these extremely difficult Kabbalistic discourses, and it makes them readable. You can actually learn what the Rebbe said when he was in a special state giving his mamarim. And it's interlinear with English and Nikudot, so it's readable. Meditate on Chassidus before you die.
Thank you very, very much. And in closing remarks, I want to mention that when I was preparing for this very special event, I realized that my wife and I were also shluchim in the States, and we came here to Yerushalayim to be shluchim. You might know, and it's a conversation for itself, the subject for itself. Usually a shliach, you're there for life, and that's it. But sometimes, depending on the situation, sometimes you're a shliach for a number of years, and then you move on to another place, which is fine. So in our case, I just want to share with you one story that happened. We became shluchim in upstate New York in Rockland County, Erev Rosh Chodesh Av, in 2004. And 2 days after we got to our post in New City, New York, I've never heard of that, New City, most people haven't heard of it, right near Muncie, so it's around the corner. And so we get this phone call from an local old age home in Nanuet that there's a person that's about to die, and they need a rabbi to come. Okay, so it's went on the job. I quickly called my rabbi, and I asked him. He told me we do the Shema, Adon Olam, Vidui, confession. I took my tefillin and I drove off to the Nanuet to that old age home. And so I come up to the person's bed, and his daughter, which was till today, Ginny, she's very, very far from Yiddishkeit, but his name is Victor, and he's laying on the bed. He's mamish. You could tell, that he was on his final breaths. And so I came gently, I said, they knew I have the rabbi coming. So I said, would you like to say a prayer together? And so I said, we started saying Adon Olam. And so I said, I'm not sure if you know the song, but I'll start singing. And if you want, you can sing along with me. So I wanted to make it easier for him. He's 83 at this point. So I started singing, Adon Olam Asher Malach. And all of a sudden he starts singing with me. Like this. This is the enunciation that he says. Adon Olam Asher Mulach B'Teirem Kol Yitzir Nibru. Like really so he turns out he's from Romania. And he hasn't said Adon Olam since he was 5 years old to learn with his Rebbe before he was drafted to the war. And he hadn't done anything. Couldn't believe he did the whole Adon Olam. And I asked him, I wasn't sure if I could move. I said, could you put on tefillin? Maybe I'll do it very slow. Yes, sure, no problem. Figured the last moments before he passes away. And so I put on the tefillin, he said the bracha, and I started saying, Shema Yisrael. And he started saying, Shema Yisrael, Adonai Shem Elokeinu. Mamish like that. I'm telling you, he goes through the whole Shema. We're saying the Shema together. Then I take off the tefillin, and you see, his life is mamish in his eyes, or his life is like coming back. And then I do the vidui, the confession, the alchet, ashamnu, the whole thing, because he could barely speak. So I did it for him instead of him going through the whole thing. And then the short story is that I came back a few times. He was let out of there. He was allowed to go home 2 weeks later. He lived another 3.5 years. 3.5 years out. His daughter said, "Clue." His daughter said, "This is a pure miracle. There's no rational explanation. These were his final moments in this world." And I think what's a bigger chiddush is that I was able to locate a cousin of his, a Satmar Chassid, who lived in Muncie, and I got him to come to put on tefillin on his elderly cousin every single day. And that's a special thing. A big round of applause for our esteemed panelists. Toda rabba rabba. Thank you so much. Thank you to from your state, our team, your Rebbe, Yerushalayim, and thanks to all of you, Acharon Achron Chavim. Let's make this B'ezrat Hashem. Please come much more often to Chabad B'Chavia. We look forward to having many more of these great events. And of course, you're welcome to meet the panelists and talk to them and ask the questions. Shalom, shalom. Tu Bishvat, happy Tu Bishvat, and happy Yud Aleph Bishvat. Shalom, shalom.
Yes, I know.